I looked back down and went on wiping the tables, putting the chairs up, trying to stop thinking about that book and Blade Markham. Just the night before, during yet another bout of writer's block and insomnia, I'd been flipping channels when I stumbled on Markham blowing hard on a rebroadcast of Pam Lane's daytime talk show. There the guy was, hawking his memoir on the biggest book show going, yammering about his heroin addiction and the time he spent with the Crips and the month he went AWOL during the first Gulf War, and his conversion to Buddhism and whatever else he'd made up and sold to Merrill Books. $500,000 for the North American rights alone. I didn't believe a word of it, but Lane's studio audience couldn't get enough, gasping and clapping and laughing as Markham spouted one lie after another. All the while, Pam Lane kept up her credulous questions, using street slang that must have been written on cue cards by whichever one of her assistants had actually read the book. "Don't you worry that some of these men you mention in your book, some of these hustlers, might try to put a cap in yo' ass?" she asked Blade. "That they might try to take yo' ass out?" "Nah, that ain't too likely," Blade told Pam. "You know, sister, the punks I wrote about in my book, they all dead, yo." Up there on that TV talk show set, Blade was acting like some old-school hip-hopper, throwing his arms out, crossing them over his chest, flashing made-up gang signs, ending all of his sentences with "yo," even though he was probably just some rich boy from Maplewood, New Jersey, whose real name was Blade Markham-whose. That's what Anya and I used to joke anyway. Everything about Blade Markham seemed like some kind of lie. His words, his shabby outfit that he'd probably planned out a week in advance, even the cross he wore around his neck. "It ain't a cross for Christ. It's a T for truth, yo," he told Pam Lane. That's when I flipped off the TV, went back to bed in my clothes, and tried in vain to think of a story to write, tried in vain to get some sleep. Now here in the coffee shop was the confident man, one more Blade Markham fan than I could stand. So when I went over to his table and told him we were closing, and that he had to scram, I might have sounded harsher than I intended. Faye bust out laughing, and Joseph, who seemed always to be looking for just the right moment to can me, flashed me a "one more outburst and you're gone" glare. The confident man dog-eared a page of his book, put on his black cashmere goggle, belted it, went over to the tip jar, and stuffed in a $20 bill, which just about doubled our tips for the night. He walked out on the Broadway without saying a word. "Think that guy craves you," Faye said, raising one eyebrow. Joseph snickered. Jokes at my expense always cracked him up. I finished cleaning, collected my share of the tips from Joseph, said sayonara to Faye, and headed down to the KGB bar to meet Anya. By the time I got there, I was still stewing about Blade by Blade, but I had all but forgotten the confident man. The Romanian. In every bar, in every city, in every country, on every continent since the beginning of time, there has always been and will always be some sullen mope who walks in with a beautiful, charming woman on his arm, and everyone in the place stops and looks and wonders how that woman wound up with that mope. For a time, I was that mope. And Anya Petrescu was that woman. Anya had the kind of beauty that was not subject to debate. It was just a fact. She had a devilish laugh, eyes so blue that people assumed she wore tinted contacts, and then there was that charming Eastern European accent. But even when Anya was telling me how much she loved me, even when we were kissing in subway cars or making mad, passionate chinaski on my lumpy pull-out couch, or skinny dipping at dawn beneath the Morningside Park waterfall, even when she was discussing how much she wished she could take me home to Bucharest to meet her family, but that was impossible now, spending time with her had